Have you ever heard of someone who died while tying their shoes or because a turtle fell on their head? What about the ones who died because a turtle got caught in their beard or bit their tongue? These true stories will shock you. Here are the most incredible and unfortunate deaths in history. Turtle falling on head. An eagle wanted to break the shell of a turtle it had caught to eat. After lifting the turtle about 3 miles above the ground, he dropped it down to break its shell. At that time, the unfortunate Aeschylus was walking in the greenery. The turtle that fell on his head exploded Aeschylus's head and caused him to lose his life. Misunderstanding. In 1992, a tragic event happened in Turkey. A man was walking on the road when he realized that his shoelaces were untied. He goes to the side of the road to tie his shoe and puts his foot on a stone next to an electricity pole. Meanwhile, a construction worker thinks that the man has been electrocuted. In panic, he hits the man on the head with a shovel to cut the current. Unfortunately, the man dies as a result of brain trauma. Bladder burst and died. Tycho Brahe was a famous Danish astronomer. Brahe attended a banquet given by the Czech king Rudolf II. At that time, there were certain rules among the nobility, one of which was that it was considered impolite to leave the table. Therefore, Brahe could not go to the toilet during the banquet. The banquet had lasted quite a long time and Brahe put excessive pressure on his bladder. As a result, Brahe's bladder stretched and burst. Following this, he became infected and died shortly afterwards. Fell from a height and disintegrated. In 1912, Austrian tailor Franz Reichelt was working on making a parachute suit. With the parachute suit he designed, he was planning an easy landing when jumping from a high place. He was going to test this parachute suit by jumping from the Eiffel Tower. On 4 February 1912 at 8:22 a.m., Reichelt put on the parachute suit and jumped from the second floor of the Eiffel Tower, from a height of about 57 meters. As the spectators thought, the parachute did not open, and Reichelt crashed rapidly to the ground. He was crushed to death at the scene. Killed himself in court. In 1871, a lawyer in the United States named Clement Vallandigham accidentally shot himself with a gun and died. Vallandigham was defending a client on trial for manslaughter. In the courtroom, he picked up a gun to reenact the incident. He thought the gun was empty, but he was wrong. When Vallandigham pulled the trigger, he shot himself in the stomach with the gun. He was hospitalized and died a day later. Fly in stomach and died. In 1975, this strange case of death stunned everyone. A man sleeping in his tent in a wooded area for camping suddenly woke up with a start. He looked around, but began to feel something strange. It was as if he could hear the buzzing of fly wings from inside his body. He got up and listened carefully. He thought that the sound belonged to a fly and realized that it might have got into his stomach. He waited for a while with his mouth open, but there was no sign of the fly coming out. Panicking, the man took out a fly spray, Shelltox, from his bag and sprayed it into his mouth. Unfortunately, this dangerous and unconscious act led to his death within minutes. Ashes, while trying to light his cigarette. In 2009, a worker in an industrial oven in Turkey opened the oven door to light a cigarette. Unfortunately, the worker was exposed to the 4442 Fahrenheit 2450 degrees temperature inside the furnace and was incinerated on the spot. Accidentally vaporized his friend. In 2011, an interesting death occurred in Turkey. A ship engineer was carrying out routine checks while the ship was in port. It was the turn of the ship's steam boiler. The third engineer of the tanker opened the door of the steam boiler and went inside with his toolbox for the checks. By chance, another crew member passing by noticed that the door was open. Unaware of the situation, he closed the door. The engineer who remained inside tried to call for help, but to no avail. Shortly afterwards, the ship started its engines to move and the steam boiler was filled with high temperature and pressure. Unfortunately, the engineer died on the spot. She died because she was wearing a shawl. American ballerina Isadora Duncan died tragically. On 4 September 1927, Duncan, who was sitting in the left back seat of an open-top car after a show in France, the shawl she was wearing around her neck was blown by the wind, and the shawl became entangled in the left rear wheel. Duncan's neck suddenly stretched and broke. Duncan died at the scene. Jack Daniels kicked and died. Jack Daniel, the famous Tennessee whiskey producer and founder of the Jack Daniels brand, on the morning of 1911 he went to his workplace. He needed to get something from the safe, but he couldn't remember the combination. Jack Daniel, who struggled for hours to open the safe, kicked the steel safe hard as a last resort. The safe did not react at all to this kick. However, Jack Daniels' toe was injured. Ignoring the injury, Jack continued to struggle furiously to open the safe. After a while, the toe injury became infected, and the infection caused blood poisoning, leading to Jack Daniels' death. Died during film shooting. Bruce Lee's son, Brandon Lee, died accidentally during the filming of The Crow. Brandon Lee was a talented actor like his father, and his death was similar to the mystery of his father's death. In the film scene, Brandon Lee was supposed to be shot with a gun, and the gun was supposed to be empty. However, there was a live bullet in the gun. Brandon Lee was shot in the abdomen when the gun went off and bled to death within a few hours. In memory of Brandon Lee, the missing scenes of the film were completed with the help of stuntmen. Brandon's final performance keeps him alive and is remembered as one of the most tragic events in the history of cinema. A tragic death in wartime. On 9 May 1864, during the Battle of Spotsylvania in the American Civil War, a tragic event occurred. General John Sedgwick noticed that his soldiers were frightened, and to encourage them, he said, "What is this fear? These sharpshooters couldn't hit an elephant from here." A few seconds after he said these words, he was unfortunately shot in the forehead and died. Father and son killed each other. In 2002, a father and son were working on different shifts at the same workplace. The father was leaving work and the son was returning home. They were both driving motorbikes. The father, who was late, was driving his motorbike very fast. They met at a sharp bend and wanted to greet each other. Father and son lost control and collided. Both died horribly at the scene. The king died of a monkey bite. King Alexander I of Greece was spending time in his summer palace in 1917. On a sunny day, while walking around the palace garden with his dog, he noticed two macaque monkeys running towards him from the left side of the garden. The dog ran towards the macaque monkeys to protect its owner. Seeing the macaque monkeys attacking the dog, King Alexander I wanted to drive the monkeys away to save his dog. However, the monkey's next target was the king. The king was bitten on his hand and leg. Sometime after the incident, the bite wounds became infected and he died of blood poisoning. They died by vomiting. This incident in 1971 is mind-boggling. Two men were working as night guards at an amusement park and had drunk a lot of alcohol that night. The guards, who were drunk, took advantage of the fact that no one was in the park, got on the flying chair for fun, and started the machine. However, the flying chair spun continuously until the morning. The guards died due to extreme physical exertion and dehydration, as they had vomited continuously until the morning. He died by tripping on his beard. In 1567, the Austrian mayor Hans Steininger died in a very interesting way. There was a big fire in the town of Braunau am Inn. The fire was growing very fast. People were trying to escape in panic. Steininger was also trying to escape from the fire, but he had a disadvantage: his beard. Steininger's beard was about 1.5 meters long. Steininger stepped on his own beard while trying to escape the fire and fell to the ground. Hans, who fell very hard to the ground, broke his neck and died from a tongue bite. Alan Pinkerton was a famous American detective and founder of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. In 1884, while walking the streets of America, he tripped and fell. At this time, he unfortunately bit his tongue badly. Pinkerton initially ignored this situation, but the wound on his tongue was more serious than he thought. Over time, the wound became infected and caused blood poisoning. Pinkerton died as a result of this infection. Broken neck at the hairdresser's. In 1980, a tragic event took place in India. A man decides to shave because his hair is getting long and goes to the barber. He sits on the barber's chair and shaves. After the shave, the barber asks the customer if he wants to massage and relax his neck. When the customer says yes, the barber suddenly and sharply turns the customer's neck. As a result of this movement, the customer's neck breaks and the man loses his life.